What's up, YouTube? It's your boy JP's on the keys, and it's too easy about the video today. And I had a lot of things on my mind today, and I wanted to watch this video. This is the Sowell debunking systemic racism, having common decency. Before we get to this video, this is a quick little disclaimer. I'm going to put a timestamp if you want to skip this. So if you want to watch the video, I've noticed how in this political climate that we call America, it's either the far left or the far right. Apparently it's wrong to be in the middle. It's wrong to share something. It's a problem when you like some stuff from both sides. But my thing is, I can't deal with any of y'all from the far aspect of either ones, because the far left is nothing but panderers and trying to cancel people for they're trying to be so inclusive that you can't say anything. You feel what I'm saying? But then the far right, a lot of these people in the far right are racist, but they don't want to admit it. You feel what I'm saying? A lot of these people in the far right are just as bad as people in the far left. We don't have a problem with black people. We just want black people to stay in their own country. Oh, you know what? Because white people are not the majority anymore, we are under threat. You feel what I'm saying? What? We're under, okay. Like I said, man, and these be the same people that say diversity is bad, but yet they be the first ones to try to hire unskilled workers from these third world countries full of the migrants that they supposedly hate so much for unskilled labor. Yeah, right. Yeah, you hate them so much till you can fly them over to America and outsource their jobs so they can work for pennies on the dollar while you line your pockets. Stop that. Please stop. Immigration is so bad. Migrants coming is so bad unless they're coming for unskilled labor. You feel me? For cheap unskilled labor. Look, the sugar fields in the 90s, they were exporting Jamaicans into Florida to cut the sugar fields. Think about it, the transatlantic slave trade. Millions of migrant Africans were literally brought to the United States for literally cheap labor. But that wasn't a problem, because they were building the economy. You feel what I'm saying? I don't understand. I don't like none of y'all on the far left, because it's we got to cancel everything. He can't say this because that's disrespecting some group. But then it's the far right is oh my God, if white people are not the majority, then that's a problem. Oh my goodness. Yes. Oh my God. It's not okay to be a white. It's okay to be a white man. Bro, that's too much. I ain't gonna lie, that's the dumbest stuff I've heard in my life. It's okay. It hasn't been okay to be like that for years, bro. These people will be forgetting that the United States was literally built on the back of slave labor, bro. It was legal. All this, black codes, Jim Crow, redlining, fugitive slave law, segregation. These were laws that were put into place to separate black people. But apparently, those were the good old days. Those were the good days, apparently, according to these people. You feel what I'm saying? Those were the good days. We everything would be better if we all stayed in amongst our own people. And then, look at Japan, look at China. There's no problems with racism, obviously, because they're all the same race. Duh. What are you talking about? What do you mean? But let's go. I'm sick. I'm really sick. I get sick of y'all.
What would you do about our school systems?
Oh my goodness! I'll try to be rational.
Do try.
They are so awful. The public has no idea. I'm reading a book about the schools, and the woman who's writing it, Diane Ravitch, is talking about how teachers have due process before they can be fired. Now, when you look into the facts of it, right down here in, I think it was Atherton, it cost $500,000 to fire one incompetent teacher. you don't have a big enough budget, And
Right.
in New York, you have something called the rubber room. These are teachers who are so incompetent that the principals don't want them in the classroom, and they get paid full salary, and they show up, and they accrue pension rights and so forth. And the last time, I forget how many millions of dollars are spent a year in New York paying for teachers who don't teach, and in fact don't do anything but show up at the same time as if they were teaching, and they read magazines or whatever they feel like doing. And this farce goes on at a time when they don't have enough money to provide the kids with decent supplies.
So how do we scale back this? I mean, we can talk about it through the lens of education, but in any area where the government has taken on a bigger role than it's supposed to, I think one of the things you hear all the time is it's sort of too late. I think a lot of people think it's too late to take back that government power.
No, heavens, during the Reagan administration, that was the only time I know of when the Federal Register grew smaller, that is, where they compile all the laws that have been passed in a given time. So it can be done. It's not easy, but it can be done. Someone once, there was some issue that Reagan was discussing, and someone said, it's complicated. He said, it's not complicated. It's just not easy to do. I mean, right now, one of the big farces out here talks about affordable housing, and they're appointing blue ribbon committees to look into why there's no affordable housing. And I think that's like appointing a blue ribbon committee to explain why the ground is wet after a rain. I mean, it's very simple. If you prevent people from building housing and the population is growing, you're going to have a housing shortage, and you won't have affordable housing. Yeah. It's really, economics 1 during the first 2 weeks.
They're not very good at taking economics 101, I don't think. So would your answer be in almost every case to just scale back government, scale back regulation?
It depends on what they're doing. There are some things that government is necessary to do.
So what are those type of things that you...
For security, first of all, having dependable laws. Some people think that if you're for free markets, that means you don't think the government should do anything. No. The free markets don't operate except within a framework of laws. That's wholly different from having them operate with politicians jumping in at unpredictable times to suddenly pass some new legislation.
Yeah. What can we do right now? I mean, so really this would be about just sort of electing more libertarian-minded politicians then? I mean, is that really the only way we can change things, do you think?
No, I think the main thing, people have to know what the facts are themselves.
Right. You're not going to have any libertarian. You're not going to have no libertarian politician even get anywhere, especially in America. Are you serious? There's no libertarian. It's not we're going to do stuff for everybody. It's either one side or the other. That's how America works. That's how it's been working forever. It's either you're on the left, or you're on the right. If you're in the middle, they think something wrong with you because why can't you just subscribe to one side? Why can't you just be a Democrat? Why can't you just be a Republican? Why can't I just take what I like from all these things and combine it into my own ideology? You feel what I'm saying? How is that so bad? You feel me?
If everyone knew what all the facts were, I think you'd have an entirely different set of people elected. I can't believe that either of the presidential candidates in 2016 would have been the candidates if you had an informed public.
Yeah,
and you know what? Just for clickbaity purposes, I'm just gonna put black guy reacts to this just for clickbait, just for clickbait. That's all. Just for clickbaity purposes. That's all. Just know. Just know if you see that title, don't think I'm like it's clickbaity, bro. This is YouTube, bro.
Very good at that. How much of this do you think is part of the media's fault? That's one of the things.
Well, the media are mostly uninformed. No, they're not uninformed. They are misinformed, and they simply do not check the facts on large issues or small.
Yeah. What can we do to fix that, do you think? I mean, I suppose this, right?
But
writing books like this.
Well, but I think more fundamentally, the public that votes has to itself become informed. and not be so easily stampeded by slogans and a few numbers thrown around. Like
That's
you know,
true.
women make X% of what men make, and so on.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, facts.
When I was studying that some years ago, for example, I found out that young female doctors made much less money than young male doctors. And that seemed like very odd. And so, but when you look into it, you discover that young male doctors work an average of 500 hours a year more than young female doctors, and they get paid for the 500 hours. But there's no reason why the women and men should be doing the same thing. Their circumstances are different.
So are there any laws that are
But the thing is, like, they won't tell you this, bro. Like, everyone always, like, they'll cherry pick one little fact that supports their narrative, and they'll just push it, regardless of if there's something else out there that can literally debunk this theory entirely. Just because this one little measly fact supports the narrative I want to push, I'm going to push it, and I'm going to push it like it's concrete. And then when somebody tries to oppose it, I'm going to just attack them. Name calling, insults, deplatforming, canceling, all this.
in place right now that you believe are discriminatory one way or another towards any community or against any community?
Oh, I would have to write a much larger book to cover them all. The minimum wage law is absolutely devastating. The policy of saying that you cannot have more kids from one ethnic group disciplined in the school than from another is nonsense. I mean, groups are different from each other in umpteen ways, and to have the presumption that they are the same except for the way they're treated is nonsense. It's never been true, and I don't know why we would think it's true here today.
So I do sense that some of what you just said there is bubbling up into the national conscious, because I get a ton of email from black conservatives now, people that feel that they haven't been represented fairly, or that the so-called leaders of the black community that are on television all the time are actually preaching the complete reverse of everything that you've said here.
Yes.
Do you sense that there is some sort of growing conservative movement
Well, there
in
was
the black community?
There was a time when that community consisted of me and Walter Williams. I know Walter used to say the two of us should never fly on the same plane, otherwise the whole movement will disappear if the plane goes down.
Well, I mentioned to you before we started that Larry Elder caused my awakening, because I was a progressive and I said something to him about systemic racism on air, and he beat me senseless with facts. And I had to go back and reassess what was wrong with my thinking.
Well,
like, bro, like, people, you can, like I said, bro, these people can say, like, I'm not saying that I'm using the system. I'm not saying, for me, I'm not going to use it as a system, as an excuse of why I'm not where I am. But these people cannot sit there and keep acting like it wasn't like this. People talking about, get over it. How? When it's burnt into people's psyches. How? How do you expect people to get? How do you expect a group of people to get over 400 years of enslavement? How do you expect somebody to get over that? People talk about, oh, why are African countries so behind? They literally just, Britain owned all of Africa until like the 40s, until the 1940s, bro. Britain literally owned all of Africa. They were so used to colonialism, they don't know how to lead a country on their own. They didn't know. Why do you think all the African countries went under control of the military? Because they didn't know what to do, because they were so used to colonialism. What do you mean? Stop. People keep acting like all this stuff didn't exist back then. It did. Like, bro, 70 years ago, my grandparents tell me all the time when they had to go in the back of restaurants. I'm sure he had to do it too, since he old enough. He old enough. There's no way you go through Jim Crow and then all of a sudden go say, well, systemic racism really doesn't exist, even though I literally lived through segregation and Jim Crow and black codes and all that. Like, you know what I'm saying? I understand saying that, saying that people use it as a crutch, but you can't say it never existed at all. You can't. And if you try to deny it, you're just denying facts. You're denying history. You're literally denying the whole 20th century. Literally. That's really how I feel. Because there's no way. Like, this dude lived through it. He's in his 80s. He lived through that. Like, there's no way you lived through that and then say it doesn't exist. Oh, it's not a systematic. Then what was the point of Martin Luther King? What was the point of Malcolm X? What was the point of the Black Panthers? What was the point of all that then? What was the point? You feel what I'm saying? What was the point? What was the point of the NAACP? What was the point of the ALCU? What was the point? You feel what I'm saying? The ACLU. What was the point of all that? If it didn't, you know what I'm saying? What was the point? Why were they doing it then? Why? You feel what I'm saying? Why? That's just my explanation. Hey, I may be wrong, but I'm just saying.
Oh, and in one of the chapters there, I have a little section about the era of apartheid in South Africa, and I had that in there because there's so much argument about how much racism is there and so forth. And I said, let's test this hypothesis in a setting where there's absolutely no doubt of it, and that's apartheid in South Africa, with a government where blacks are not allowed to vote and so forth. And you then apply the economic principles, and you find that the economic principles apply in South Africa. That there are some occupations. See, blacks weren't allowed by law to be in certain occupations more than a certain percentage, and in some occupations couldn't be hired at all. In some of those occupations where they couldn't be hired at all, well, illegal to hire them at all, there were more blacks hired than there were whites, because there are economic factors that come in, and you don't just pass a law and that automatically produces the results you want.
Yeah. Can you go into some of the economic factors that you mentioned there? Because I thought it was sort of interesting about the types of jobs that black people had and why that would affect.
Well, it's the competitiveness of the industry. And the competitive industry discriminate.
There were laws made to stop black people from doing stuff, but it wasn't systemic though. You feel what I'm saying? Like, there were laws. Like, I would understand if it was like some type of societal rule that nothing is concrete, but it's a law, bro. A law that was enforced by people.
In the sense that we use for anti-discrimination laws, it costs the discriminator as well as the others. Now, insofar as that price can be evaded by the discriminator, he will discriminate. For example, minimum wage laws. When you have a minimum wage law, you have more people applying for jobs in those categories than there are jobs available, because raising the wage rate causes more people to apply and employers to hire fewer because they're more expensive. And so you have a chronic surplus. Now, if you've got a chronic surplus in an industry, it costs nothing to discriminate. But if you have a competitive market, then of course it does cost something. For every person that you discriminate against who's qualified, you've got to hire somebody else, and you've got to raise that pay rate in order to get people in. So I show how competitive industries have much less discrimination than, say, regulated public utilities.
So I was wondering when I was reading it if you were ever going to talk about how now technology is also changing this. So we see a lot of these movements for $15 minimum wage, and I know why you don't think that's a great idea. But even now, where we see McDonald's and some of these other places just replacing people with iPads and computers.
This has been happening. I don't know. When I grew up in Harlem.
That's why I tell you. That's why I be telling people, bro. You gotta get you something that you like. Even if you're gonna work a job, I feel like you should have something on the side, because it's like, who knows? These people, like, these businesses are about profit margins. They don't care about people. Like, you think the Walmart CEO cares about little old Bob in Jackson, Mississippi, about his water, about in Jackson, Mississippi, about his wage? He don't care. You're just a number in the system. It's about profit margins. You feel what I'm saying?
When you went into a movie theater, this is a little neighborhood movie theater in Harlem, there would be a kid who would walk down the aisle with you with a flashlight to show you to your seat. You see, And so now that we have so many compassionate people who want people to be paid a living wage, you stumble down down the aisle to your seat the best way you can, because they're not going to pay you that kind of money, that's unrelated to productivity.
Yeah. What would you say to the people? I hear a growing movement of people saying, well, this is why we need a universal basic income, because technology is going to force so many people out of the workplace.
Oh, that argument has been made for centuries, and it's been proven wrong for centuries. I would ask the question: what has happened? We've moved in that direction already. We have lots of people who can live off the welfare state and not have to be productive.
Oh my God, bro. See, listen. Let me tell you something. Like, I don't understand how, like, these people, people all of a sudden, they become successful and they forget that there's people who are poor and struggling. Like, I don't understand it. People be, like, you get a little bit of money. I'm not saying him, but just, I know a whole bunch of people who think like that. Oh my God, all these people abusing welfare. Well, let me tell you something. When the cost of living is rising every single year, when the wages are not increasing, when inflation is hitting and prices of everything are increasing, don't you think that people who don't have money would have difficulties paying for these things? Oh my God, the government steps in to help people who actually need help, and it's a problem. Like, what's the problem? The real problem is, why are you giving tax cuts to the super rich? That's the problem. Not why are you giving welfare to the poor people who actually need welfare. You feel what I'm saying? Like, that's their problem. They're mad that poor people are getting help. I don't understand it. Like, what do you want them to be on the street? Then you go and complain that they homeless and out on the street. You feel what I'm saying? Like, bro, like, people start getting some money and they forget about the people who are at the bottom, because they don't care about people at the bottom, because they think that they think they higher than them. You know what I'm saying?
And how are they better people as a result of that? I saw some time back, and I haven't followed this, that young people, the suicide rates among young people were among the negative consequences of the 1960s. You've taken all meaning out of people's lives, and so they find all kinds of crazy things to do, drugs, whatever. And then, again, it's not peculiar to the United States. You find this in Britain, other countries. And so, again, people who say this almost never look at any facts about what's happened as we expanded the welfare state. Did people behave better? No. I mean, one of the things moments that I remember very well, when I was back into school in Harlem for some reason, maybe doing research, and I looked out the window and I said, when I was a teenager, I used to walk my dog in that park, and looks of horror came over the students' faces, because that was a different world. And so, and when I tell them that I used to sleep out on a fire escape on hot summer nights with who could afford air conditioning, and they think I'm a man from Mars. People did that all over New York. They did it in Washington. They did it in North Carolina. Relatives in Washington used to go down Haynes Point, down near the Jefferson Memorial, on hot summer nights and sleep there till sometime after midnight when the heat wouldn't be so bad, and they'd go home at that time. You'd be out of your mind to do that today. It'd be too dangerous.
Yeah. So how do we sort of untie some of this? So my sister right now lives on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, not too far from Harlem, and she's in a half rent stabilized or rent controlled building, yes, and half market price. She's on the market price, so she's paying to be in a 2-bedroom in New York City. I don't even want to tell you how expensive it is. But then there are basically half of the building that's paying next to nothing, and that, of course, incentivizes people not to get off the dole, because if you're living in a nice area on the Upper West Side, very cheap, why in the world would you ever get off the dole? how do we start solving these problems? And I know facts is your bedrock answer.
Oh my God! How dare poor people have nice things? This is really what it sounds like. How dare poor people have nice things? How dare poor people have anything? Actually, really, how dare they have anything? You feel what I'm saying? How dare they actually, like, I understand, maybe not no 2-bedroom apartment, but at least, you know what I'm saying? Like, some people need help, bro. Like, what do you mean? And plus, the thing is, even with the welfare system, your income is capped. You can't even make that much money. So what's the point? If you can only make $25,000 a year, like, are you really enjoying life? Like, these people really think that they living it up on welfare, bro. Can you like? Oh my gosh, she got $200 of free food. You're not going to the upscale lobster place and using your EBT card. You're going to the corner store. You're going to the supermarket. You're going to Walmart to get essential food for your kids. Like, people don't like. Oh my God, how dare poor people? How dare poor people have nice things? Why can't they work for everything, even though they might not have had all the opportunities that rich people have? Oh my God, I wasn't born into wealth. I didn't live in a community full of middle class people. I was born poor. You know what I'm saying? People don't understand that. People don't come from that, so they can never understand what it means. They don't understand what it means to have to eat ramen noodles for a week because you ain't had the money to get ramen noodles when the power went out and all we had was cereal and sandwiches in the house. They don't understand that, man. Like, the world is completely different. That's why I salute Thomas Sowell because he brings the reality to it. But the people you're talking to, they don't understand the world. They don't understand it. They don't understand the world that poor people live in. They don't. They've never been dirt. Most people have never been dirt poor in their life. Like, I don't.
Yes.
But what can we do to get people to understand some of this stuff? Because it seems so basic to understand. If someone was giving you something that you didn't earn,
again,
it's hard to.
This is common. One of this.
You see what I'm saying? They don't deserve it because they didn't earn it. You feel like, bro? I don't even understand. Yeah, just like I said, rich people, they didn't deserve those tax. Did they really earn all that money on taxes? Did they really earn all those tax cuts for the rich? Did they really deserve all those? Well, meanwhile, these politicians are using taxpayer money to send over to foreign countries, sending millions of dollars in aid to foreign countries. Wow. Meanwhile, you got all this homeless population and people struggling.
In Europe, in England especially, it's a special problem because you have this place where your rent is subsidized, and say you're in London, and jobs are disappearing in London, and they're opening up in Manchester. Now, if you go to Manchester, you get on a waiting list for that kind of job. And if you stay in London, you're unemployed, but your rent is low. And so you slow down the movement of people, you slow down the turnover of people in these apartments. But again, most people who talk about this don't even talk in terms of if this, then that. They talk about it as, this is how the world ought to be. Well, heck, I can think of all kinds of things of how I think the world ought to be. But unfortunately, most of those things involve a cost, a trade-off.
Do you think there's a system or a government that's doing it better, doing freedom better than we're doing it here? For all the flaws that we have in this system, is anyone doing it better than us?
Oh, there may be marginally so, but I think most of the Western world is less free than it was, say, 30 years ago, 40 years ago.
By what measurements do you view that?
Oh, just the amount of regulations, things and also by consequences. I was reading Milton Friedman's. He and his wife had a joint autobiography, and she's looking at one point. She says looking back on the days when she would ride the IND subway in Manhattan, and what a joy it was. And she said in those long gone days, and the IND subway goes through Harlem. And Milton Friedman and his wife, when they were still courting, used to go dancing at the Savoy Ballroom. very few people want to, and you know the famous theme song of Duke Ellington, "Take the A Train."
Mm-hmm.
The A Train goes right through Harlem on the I&D line. And so Friedman, who was only 5'2", had no fear of being mugged or even accosted, and go there. And this was common. There was a black actress who used to get finished with play and her socializing afterwards. And at 1 o'clock in the morning, she said she would be taking the subway up to 155th Street and St. Nicholas Avenue by herself and walking home. Nobody does that these days. And so you have to look, one, at what are the facts? How did they change? And you don't simply say. The other thing is that they're saying the No Child Left Behind thing with Bush.
Mm-hmm.
There are kids who go to school to raise hell, and a handful of those can prevent the whole class from learning anything. Now, the logical thing would be to separate those kids out and let
More discrimination. That's more discrimination. Like you're answering your own. You're debunking your own theory that you thought you debunked. We're gonna discriminate, even though discrimination don't exist. We're gonna separate the kids who are bad than the kids who are good. What's your determination on that? What's your scale to determine who's bad and who's good? Based on your opinion? It's more discrimination. Discrimination on top of discrimination.
The ones who want to learn something, learn something. You can't do that because the ideology says no. And so you sacrifice whole generations of poor and minority kids for this ideology and this utopian notion.
Yeah, and we end up in an odd dystopia, probably.
Yeah, and Milton Friedman used to say, the best is the enemy of the good. Yeah. And of course, it would be better if everybody could be educated at the same time. It can't be done.
Why can't it? Why can't you see? Like this is why I be getting wary of people, because it's like, well, sometimes we just have to exclude people. Sometimes some people aren't just gonna make it. Sometimes everybody can't do this. You feel what I'm saying? It's like the may the best man win type mentality. Not, oh man, you see somebody struggling, can we help them? Can we provide help for these people who are struggling, please? Rather than, oh well, since you can't compete and you're just done.
So as someone that has survived the arrows and the venom that the left can throw at you, because I see a lot of this these days, I see even what they say to me, I get a lot of email from people saying, how can I be brave enough to do it? And I think it's particularly a unique situation for minorities that consider themselves conservative or libertarian or a little bit to the right. So I mentioned Larry Elder before, and of course you and my friend David Webb, and there are some more black conservatives than perhaps there used to be.
No question about it.
What would be if someone's watching this right now and just
remember Ben Carson said black slaves were immigrants with opportunity. That's what Ben Carson said.
Needs that little extra bit of courage to start saying.
No. You have to look at the circumstances. I mean, I've advised some young people, do not go into teaching in public schools, because the odds are so stacked against you, and people can write bad references for you, especially when you're young, and what they say about you is all that someone sees. Now, by the time I was teaching at some of these schools, I remember one place where the department chairman used to threaten one of my colleagues that he wouldn't write good references for him. I'd published stuff while I was still in graduate school. I had Milton Friedman and George Staylor to write references for me. What this guy said there as chairman of the department wouldn't matter a bit. But most people don't have that situation.
No.
And so you have to pick your fights.
Mm-hmm. So I want to, time is limited here, I want to mention one thing that you say right at the end of the book, that really what we need more than anything else, perhaps, is common decency.
Yes.
And we've kind of lost that.
It isn't common anymore. I mean, when I was going to school and we'd have fights on the schoolyard grounds, when one guy was clearly beaten, whoever was the toughest kid in the crowd would simply step in and stop it. And the other guys would say, "You want to fight? You can fight me." You know.
That's what we need in the public square now.
Yes, yes. But I mean, there's only so much the police can do. If you don't have common decency, the cops are not going to be able to handle it. And especially when everyone is second guessing it. I love it when people who have never fired a gun in their lives say, "Why do the cops fire so many guns?" Now, at one time, I taught pistol shooting in the Marine Corps. It doesn't surprise me in the slightest that they fired so many things under those conditions. But people can't be knowledgeable about everything, but they can be knowledgeable about the extent of their own ignorance, even if they have PhDs.
Sir, this has been a true honor and a pleasure, and I know.
You know what? I respect Thomas because he's not afraid to speak how he speaks, but it's like the mentality that you feel that people just deserve, that some people just deserve to not be included in anything just because they might not be who you think are desirable people, members of society. Like that's I don't like that. I don't like that way of thinking. I don't like I feel like my way of thinking is kind of socialist in a way, because it's like, if somebody's struggling, why can't we give them the tools they need to help, rather than get mad at him for struggling? Like, you do understand, in order to qualify for welfare, you have to be under a certain salary. You have to be under a certain income. Do you understand how low the income? I'm gonna show you this. Hold on, bro. Think of look, bro. Like, let's just say for me, like, I live in a state. Let me see. I live in a state. I live in Delaware, right? For one person in the house, the maximum level income to qualify, the maximum you can have to qualify for welfare is $17,000 a year. That's the maximum for one person living in the house. For one person, if you make less than $17,000, you can apply for welfare. Do you understand how little that is in the retrospect? Like, these people are poor. That's the reason they're on welfare, because they're poor. And you're talking about they're milking the system. They don't have enough. How? They don't have anything. What do you mean? Talking about, oh, that's the reason welfare was created, for poor people. For poor people. Why are you mad that people are getting the help they need when you can obviously afford everything you want? Like, I've never understood that. Like, I might have said something that made you feel a certain way, but you know what I'm saying? The comments are here, bro. The comments are here. You know, I'm in the comments all the time. I'm not afraid to say nothing. But thank y'all so much for supporting. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video. I had to speak my mind, because, like, just because somebody talks proper and they got a PhD, I'm not just going to fall in love with everything they say. Because you got to question everything, man. You have to question everything. You have to. But thank you so much. I really appreciate you. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. I'm out. Peace.